They have no idea where we are, who we are, where we're coming from, or who we are, where we're coming from, or who we are, where we're coming from, or who we are, where we're coming from. And this is the best of the best. Wow. That is
football. What up, everybody? Welcome back to the Chop Shop. This is Ronnie Evans. I am your host. Jeff DiMatteo will be joining me shortly. He's having some internet issues. Thank you, Comcast. And it's a beautiful day outside. It's a wonderful day inside. I got TV going on the screen behind me here. I got my Batman stuff to the right, and overall, I'm just really happy with the way that week 3 is going to go, if things go the way I'm expecting. But most importantly, week 2 was just as nuts as week 1. We had some pretty wild performances. It looks like Jeff is finally joining in. Perfect timing. I just finished with the intro. And I was talking about everything. I was talking about week 2, week 3, but also just how things are going in general. So how are things going from your end?
Well, today at work, it was actually the day from hell. So this is a nice reprieve. And I'm hoping that I have plenty of answers and plenty of good commentary to provide, as I didn't get to spend really any time today looking at anything that wasn't work related.
Well, we can do a couple things here. We're going to try to keep this show shorter, maybe 25, 30 minutes here, and just bang through some waivers, but also wanted to have just an off-the-cuff discussion on strategy right now for you in leagues, because we are entering about a quarter of the way through the regular fantasy football season. Mm-hmm. And it sneaks up every year. All of a sudden, it's week 6, it's week 7. People are scrambling to make trades. And in the leagues you win, it's week 3, week 4 that you make those moves. So where's your head at right now, Jeff? Just in the general team management landscape, with we're this early in the season, people are going to overreact. People are probably not sure what to do with their teams in general, but how are you handling things?
Well, I think it really depends not only on my own record and what's happening on my roster, but I like to look at the landscape of the league, right? So I have one league I'm in where we have a couple of really defined front runners. And unfortunately in this league, I didn't have a pick until round 9 or so. It's a keeper league and I had no picks. Sold out to win a title. And my team's actually pretty okay, but I've got a little bit of a conundrum right now. I've got Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift. They were keepers. I've got Cordero Patterson, and I've got Ramondre Stevenson. And Swift is banged up. He may miss a few weeks. And missing a few weeks right now with the makeup of my squad could be devastating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in the same situation I am, where you have Swift, and you probably took him earlier, second round probably, it might be time to consider trying to trade him as a guy that's going to help somebody win a title. But it's almost like reverse psychology here. You send that guy Swift, and maybe you can get back a couple of pretty decent pieces. It might be a little under the radar. Maybe you get one solid piece and then a secondary piece that'll help you. I think right now, like Swift's a guy. I mean, he's in our league. He's a 12th round keeper. So that carries a lot of value. So I'll be shopping him in the next couple of weeks to a couple of these teams that are 3-0 right now that look really good and probably feel like they're buying a league winning asset. Whereas I'm going to try and take a couple of those really good players they have on their roster right now, right? And try and restock myself so that I can go ahead and try and get into the playoffs and make their lives miserable come December.
Yeah, I think everyone is doing somewhat a similar exercise right now, which is just kind of analyzing their team, how it's performed for 2 weeks. And in some situations, you've got, I'm sure plenty of people that end up watching the show will be people who have a loss, but they were a top 3 scoring team that week, and they lost anyway because they played the highest scoring team. I know that happened to you and I last week in separate leagues, and it's really frustrating. But it's one of those things where you're like, all right, whatever. That's a loss. It's week 2. No skin off my back. And I tend to look at my team at this point, and I look at like my core advantage makers first. And so the reason I wanted to bring this up when you're doing team eval, it's tricky sometimes to start looking at the bottom of your roster than the top of your guy. Who do you want to trade for? How does this guy feel about trading that guy? Blah, 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 blah. You want to simplify it. You only have to do two things. A, figure out your like 2 or 3 key assets on your team and how they are performing compared to the rest of your league and their key assets. And then look at just the bottom 3 or 4 guys that you are starting probably every single week and see if there is a way for you to maybe swap 1 or 2 of those guys from this bottom 3 or 4 for another guy and upgrade that back end. But you want to look at your key assets first, because if you are in a situation where you have someone like, I don't know, Joe Burrow, who's looked terrible and then looked okay this week, but was bad in week 1 and was bad for the most part of the first half this week. And if you're in the situation like that and you're maybe 1-1 or 1-2, depending on doubleheaders, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I just tend to go through and look at the top 2 or 3 guys on my team. If I can swap them around to improve, I'll do that. But otherwise, if they're looking fine, just figure out 2 or 3 guys on the back end of my starting lineup and not worry about those bench spots, because you can play waivers. It's so early in the season right now. There's still going to be someone that falls off on waivers in the next 2 or 3 weeks that ends up winning a lot of people a lot of money in a lot of weeks. Anyway, rambling here. We can dive into waivers here in a second, speaking of that. But I was kind of overwhelmed and underwhelmed a little bit while I watched football this weekend. I actually had Sunday Ticket pulled up over here on my Xbox. I was sitting in this chair. I had all 4 screens up. And I actually dozed off a little bit during the midday games. I was just not
studying. You and Kyler Murray study the same way.
I know, right? I was just not enticed by a lot of football. And then we had the Monday night snooze fest, the Sunday night snooze fest, courtesy of Denver. And as a Broncos guy now, a Russell Wilson guy, life is just kind of boring. I'm excited about Mahomes and the regular usual suspects, but anything stand out to you this week specifically? Like, there's a few guys that have looked good week in, week out. I know Pickens had that one catch that everyone loved, but it doesn't really translate to fantasy yet.
That play is going to get him more targets, though. Let's remember what happened with Odell Beckham that year when he had that catch, right? When he was that guy. He blew up a few weeks later, and you get him out of your starting lineup at that point, right? And I'm not saying Pickens is going to be that guy with Trubisky, but I'm also saying it's not impossible. So if you've got Pickens, you're holding them right now, and you're pretty excited. A couple of things that stood out to me, though. Miami Dolphins offense lacked the firepower I thought it would have against a really undermanned Bills defense. Not having Poyer back there, not having Micah Hyde back there, you're missing Ed Oliver up front. There's no Tre'Davious White. I'm thinking to myself, how in the world are they going to keep, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle under 100 yards and 2 touchdowns each? And then it ended up being this like really underwhelming contest where, Miami just kept trying to reestablish the run over and over and over again. And I just didn't see that same explosiveness that we saw against Baltimore. That Buffalo secondary was banged up, bad. There's no reason they shouldn't have been winning deep on the bulk of those plays, or even through the intermediate space. Tremaine Edmonds is not exactly known as a top end coverage backer. If you're running in the middle of the field and there's no safeties and you don't have a decent coverage backer, how in the sweet heck were you not finding Gesicki, finding Waddle, finding Hill? Like, there should have been more there. It gives me a little bit of pause as I move forward and I think about, Thursday night, right? This is another one of those games. Fantasy bonanza should be, right? 2 really high-powered offenses, or so we think. But every one of those games this season seems to have really been a disappointment.
Yeah.
And so Thursday night, I'm concerned. Like, that's kind of my big takeaway. I'm like, well, what happened to Miami? Who was this team we saw? That's not what we saw against Baltimore.
I'll tell you one other take. There's 2 takeaways I have, and one will lead into waivers here because I do like Raheem Mostert as a pickup right now. But
the hoster with the Mostert.
The hoster with the Mostert. Get in while he's still healthy, baby.
Yeah.
But Jalen Waddle, I just want to say, preseason was a little worried about the Tyreek addition. Was a little worried about kind of what's happened to Elijah Moore with Garrett Wilson happening to Waddle. It's not happening. That man is a bona fide rock star. and he is going to be a regular in people's fantasy lineups for years. You need to get used to the name Jalen Waddle. He's going to be a top 20 option for the next 4 to 5 years. He's that fucking good. Excuse my language. But I watched that game, and it just like stood out to me how ridiculous he is just overall, even compared to Tyreek, who's an athletic specimen, of course. But so is Jalen Waddle, and I think Jalen Waddle actually is a more refined player than Tyreek was up until maybe the last few years, especially coming out of college.
Yeah, I mean, when they came into the league, Waddle came into the league more polished. He's a better receiver, better route runner, all of that. And I'm with that. And those guys are both, locked in your lineup dudes. There's no reason to ever pull them out. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think those guys are pretty locked in. But it just still makes you wonder, like, is everything there in that offense right now? We didn't see it with Buffalo. And this Thursday, you've got Cincinnati. Like, you're not taking them out of your lineup because they're studs. But what are we doing about, moving forward? Like, do we really think, this is going to be a situation where they end the season as both wide receiver ones? Or are we trying to use the hype of this Dolphins offense to maybe move one of them, especially with a Tua back injury potentially in play? This might be a situation where you try to sell.
I don't know.
And I don't want to overreact.
I mean, who would you sell? Like, I would be more inclined to sell Tyreek because I think you could get more. I think
it depends on your league, right? So if you're doing PPR, you got bonuses for big plays and all that kind of stuff. You could probably get a pretty good return on Tyreek. And I'm not out here selling it, sell Tyreek Hill. But if you're looking at your team and you need to add a couple of assets, you might be able to move Hill and get a couple of pieces back that are going to help you. Maybe you get, instead of a wide receiver 1, maybe you get a low-end wide receiver 2 plus a tight end. That can really help, like a tight end 1 type of a player. If you're playing in a league where you have IDPs, maybe you can get an IDP player plus the receiver. Again, how do you put more points in your lineup, turn his, 18 points a week or whatever it is right now into 2 players that are getting you 16? Because that could be more useful.
Yeah, I can see that. I wouldn't if I was able to like pick 2 out of the 2, let's say I own both, I'd be moving Tyreek simply for the name value return because I really don't see that much of a difference between the 2 guys over the course of the season.
That's fair.
And with the ups and downs you get with Tyreek, especially just with his health and just with the type of player he is, you'll probably see the same thing with Tua now. We've started to see that with him. And then Waddle will have his ups and downs. But yeah, if you're going to sell him, sell Tyreek if you can get the value back. I'm holding Waddle though.
All right. Well, so let's do a little quick exercise then. So you got Tyreek Hill, he's on your roster. It's PPR. Let's just say you get bonuses at 40+ yard touchdown. Maybe it's a 1-point bonus. Nothing crazy, right? What do you need to get back? Who are some players that you'd probably want to try and get back in a package for Tyreek Hill?
I'd always, if I could get back a elite, like top 4 or 5 tight end, I'm always happy to do that.
Okay.
I'll swap just for that positional advantage.
So let's say it's Waller. Say the guy's got Waller. Would you take Waller plus what equals Tyreek Hill?
Mooney, baby. Give me Mooney as a throw-in.
I mean, well, Mooney hasn't done anything. I'm just saying, so we're trying to help people obviously build their lineups, right?
I know.
But if you're moving Hill, you get Waller plus Mooney. I feel like if I'm getting Mooney out of the deal right now with how bad that Bears passing offense is, maybe this is a situation where I'm like, maybe I need like Mark Andrews and Mooney for Tyreek Hill. Like that feels a little tighter to me. Maybe DJ Moore. Like I feel like maybe there's some late season resurgence possible there. Maybe DJ Moore is another one of those guys, preseason darling, puts up 1,000 yards a year every year. He's not getting it done with Baker so far, and I'm not putting that on Moore. I'm putting that on Baker.
He hasn't had to play with the Muffin Man yet. So
he's played with some pretty bad quarterbacks, though. Like, let's be clear.
Baker's uniquely talented and making things weird for fantasy wide receivers, though. So
yeah, we saw what he did with Landry and Odell. But
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I would want. Like 1 for 1, Tyreek is still a top 12 wide receiver. I think that. Okay. And that's the thing you mentioned earlier. Are both these guys going to be wide receiver 1s this year? If Tua can stay healthy, I don't really know why they wouldn't be if they
already got the back thing now.
Offense the way they are. Say what?
I said he's already got this back thing, and everyone's like, oh, concussion, oh, back. It's like you're hearing a lot of different stuff, and I feel like there's not a whole lot of smoke around that, like there probably should be. Quarterbacks with back problems generally not cool for your fantasy wideouts.
Right.
That's definitely like I'm sitting on Tua in a stack of leagues right now, and I don't love the situation because in one league you and I are in together, I had Trey Lance. Whoops. I got
Yeah.
Tua. Well, now he's hurt. I'm about to have to lean on guys like, Garoppolo and Tannehill, and that's not ideal, right? But if you're in redraft, you don't have to deal with that kind of garbage. Maybe it's time to punt Tua and go get a Trevor Lawrence who's probably sitting on your waiver wire.
Oh, he's looked so good this year.
Yeah. And I think in his ceiling, we haven't seen it. Like it's not there. And so I'm starting to wonder, if I've got that Miami offense right now might be the time to sell. And so if I've got Tua, you're probably not getting crap for Tua. Sorry. It's a quarterback. Unless you're in Superflex, you're probably not getting
Yeah, and while you're talking, I'm looking at a couple notes on quarterback availability. Keep going.
Sure. Okay. And Hill, I'm saying, hey, yeah, go get a premium tight end. I think the move here right now is if you're selling Tyreek Hill, you should be able to get back a player like Mark Andrews, pair him up with, maybe a DJ Moore, a Darnell Mooney. Maybe a guy who's got some name cachet who hasn't performed to this point, a guy that you feel like maybe has some later season value like that. Maybe you can get a lesser tight end. Maybe if you need help, and this is assuming you need help at tight end, right? You go and maybe you can get a guy like Waller, who's got a lot of target competition and people are probably nervous about him. You could go maybe get Waller and maybe someone's willing to part with like a Drake London if it means they're going to get Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. All right. So let's pivot real quick. So just for the sake of, if you want to do more trade exercise talk, go back and watch some of our episodes about dynasty roster management from this offseason.
We had some good ones.
We talked for probably 45 cumulative minutes about different trades. But let's talk two guys right now.
Okay.
One is Sky Moore, because he was the darling of the chop shop for the entire offseason. Mostly thanks to me. And look, dude, I'm still fine with him in dynasty long term, but it went from not seeing time, showing a couple flashes in those super limited times to just oopsies.
Yeah, negative 1.34 points is not good. Well, here's the thing, and this is where the industry really got it wrong on Sky Moore. A lot of folks, not to call anyone out, but I mean, even Hall of Famers like John Hanson were saying, "Hey, week 1, this guy's ready. He's the dude. Get him on your roster." We were in April, June, July saying, "Look, we love Sky Moore. Take him in the first round of your rookie draft."
Well, let's be fair. You were. I have always been more, and I did meme my way into this a little bit. But
yeah, that's what you typically do, though. You like to meme your way at all kinds of weird shit. Here's the thing: this guy was always situated to be a late season breakout. Attrition's a real thing. The Chiefs are going to discover that MVS is not a very good football player. He couldn't do it with Aaron Rodgers. He's probably not going to do it with Patrick Mahomes. Juju, he's been nicked up the last few years at different points in the year. Probably going to happen again. You're looking around are they really going to lean down the playoff stretch? Are they going to be leaning on guys like, was it Jordan Fortson or whatever the guy's name is? They got this fourth receiver out here. They need somebody to pair up with Kelsey. Sky Moore can play deep. He can play the intermediate. He runs really good routes. He has to learn the playbook. This is not a simple route tree in Kansas City. It's very complex and it takes some time to absorb. And so he's still trying to figure it out, which is fine. That's what we expected. We said, this is going to be a guy, hey, week 8, 9, 10, 11. That's where we start to see that real breakout. That's when Amon-Ra really took off last year, right? And that's when Elijah Moore really took off last year. Once these guys figure it out, they're good. A lot of folks were too early on Sky Moore. I'm still in on him. I'm actually holding him in my keeper league. I'm just keeping him planted on my bench, buried, even on a short bench, just because when this guy pops, that's it. He's just going to keep going. As soon as he has that blow-up game, I'm not taking him out of my lineup.
Well, but Jeff, but what about Garrett Wilson? He's been so good off the gate. Was he just better than Sky? Yes.
He was the consensus number 1 wide receiver in this draft class.
And also, let me just tell you this too, because I brought that up because I've seen some people making comments on different players, but in similar veins. Garrett Wilson is being literally schemed into existence, whether he was an elite receiver or not. If Sky Moore got the game plan that Garrett Wilson is getting, he would also produce.
Sure.
Right. But Garrett Wilson was a better prospect, of course. I was being facetious with that. But Sky Moore is not even a part of their offensive game plan right now. If you have him, sit that man on the bench and just hang out. And if you're in a league with super shallow benches, drop him. I genuinely think you should drop Sky Moore right now. If you have like a 4 to 5 bench spot style league with 10 teams, something like that. Otherwise, hold him if you're in deeper leagues because he'll be fine into the year. But beyond that, I also went through a conversation with someone who was being offered a trade. You were talking about a different trade here. It was Najee Harris and Nick Chubb. And you and I talked about this on the phone. But
I was walking around shopping for my kids.
Dude, Gary Davenport, one of my favorite people in the industry, vehemently in favor of making the trade to get Nick Chubb and give away Najee. And quite a few other people actually were very into the idea. And I just thought 30 seconds real quick, and then I'm going to bang through some waiver targets and we can wrap up. But here's my thing. So this trade was Najee in a second round pick for Nick Chubb and a third round pick in a dynasty league. And the guy is not a contender this year. And I was like, all right, well, that's it. Here's the thing. If you're not a contender, why do you want Nick Chubb? Doesn't make any sense. I don't care what the player is. Give me the youth. Let me keep the picks. And then I think that would apply across the board, though, in dynasty management right now. If you're looking at your team, your decision making in the next 2 weeks should be, am I going to compete for the playoffs right now or am I not? And if you're not, it's going to be, how do I get in better position for the next draft? That's it. You don't want to be in the middle of those two trains of thought because then you live in purgatory. We talk about this on our shows and every other dynasty podcast does as well. But
it gets even simpler than this. It's even simpler. In dynasty, I get it. Second, third round picks are middle of the draft, whatever. I don't care. Fact is, it's not a snake draft, right? So a second and a third, especially if they're early or mid, like those can be decent picks, especially in the upcoming draft class. It's supposed to be very deep offensively. Do you want a running back on your roster if you're not a contender who turns 27 this year in December and who will be 28 on your roster next year in December? We know where the drop-off is for running backs. Do you want that guy, or do you want the guy who's in his second year plus the better draft capital? Give me the younger player. Give me the draft capital. There's no reason to take Nick Chubb in this scenario. The only way you're running Chubb in a third over Najee in a second is if you're saying, I'm contending right now, I'm going for a title, and I need the guy right now.
And I would tell you,
for Najee.
And I would tell you, like, I'm in a couple leagues right now where, like, I would consider my team top 3. And if I had Najee, I would make that trade right now for Nick Chubb. I'd be like, fuck, smash accept. Let me go for that ship, because I do think that Nick Chubb is going to outperform Najee over the next 6 weeks and over the course of this whole season. Like, it's not about 2022. Anyway. So waivers, we're heading into like the witching hour of waivers, right? I like to consider really week 3 through week 5 is like, I don't, this is completely out of my own butt, right? I'm making this up on the fly, but I feel like
it's gross. We don't like things
I feel like
your butt. It's no good.
Most waiver claims that win leagues are made in that window. It is that like second quarter of the season. It's not always that. What was that? What was that running back in New Orleans that won people championships like 5 years ago? It was a waiver claim. Everyone got hurt, picked him up, came in, super hilarious, like just random guy. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I can't remember the name, but yeah, I got you. I'm with you.
It's not always like that. So, I've got some notes here, and we were just talking about Tua, right? Let's say Tua misses time here.
Okay.
So here's some guys that are owned just kind of in general on MFL. I'm going to stay with like 25% or under.
Okay.
Jared Goff, a reigning placeholder in the Ronnie and Jeff discussions of value at quarterback. He's only owned 22% right now. Amon-Ra is looking like a god. Things are great.
He's looking like a sun god, as it were.
Yes.
Because he's which is hot.
Mac Jones might be dropped right now. He's available in 25% of leagues. I would imagine.
Yeah, he's going to miss some time now with that ankle, and we'll hear more about that, on Thursday morning when the guys drop the injury pod.
Baker Mayfield. Let's see. Joe Flacco's the other one I wanted to bring up. So Joe Flacco
he's a drop. He's a drop right now. He's not an ad. He's a drop. We're going to see Zach Wilson soon.
Is Zach Wilson back right now this week?
I I don't know if definitively, but I believe he's coming back week 4 or week 5. So I'm not
So
trying
if
to.
you need a filler for Tua this week,
Oh, dude, it's Goff. It's out of that group, it's Goff. It's not even a question.
let's say Goff is taken because you're in a savvy league.
Okay,
Would
it's pretty
so
sad.
Flacco's thrown for like 300 yards, right, against two pretty decent defenses, and it's been garbage time. It's been absolute bogus, classic
Yeah.
Flacco nonsense.
Yeah, Joe Flacco, you mean?
Right, but like I won a few games a couple years ago with Brian Hoyer when he was filling in because I knew the guy was going to throw the ball a ton in the fourth quarter, and it worked. You need that sometimes if you're in a league that has normal quarterback scoring. I actually kind of like Flacco as a filler this week if you're really desperate at quarterback. But moving on, that's Ronnie's take. Jeff doesn't endorse.
No, that's a hard pass. I'm Goff, and if I'm that bad at quarterback right now, like if my league's that savvy where I'm down to those 4 guys, and I have Tua and it's my only quarterback, and he's hurt, I'm probably going to trade a player to go get a quarterback because the value in that league must be higher for some reason. And I'll go trade for a guy who's, I don't care. Go trade for Trevor Lawrence. Go trade for anybody else.
Right. All right. Top target for me this week at running back is Raheem Mostert. I think so. The thing is that he's owned, I think, in like half leagues in most places. But if he's available on the waiver wire right now, I would be willing to throw like a third of my budget just to grab him. And part of that is his usage. Part of it is just watching both of their games this season. And part of what you talked about already, which was like, why isn't run game working? This, that, and the third, just in general about that offense running only through Tua's arm, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek so far.
Sure.
A lot
of hurt linemen
good
there,
when
too.
Raheem Mostert's been in. He's looked fantastic in that offense. And I saw, forget what beat reporter it was or who it was that brought this up, but it sounds like Mostert's going to start leading the backfield in like touch volume, et cetera, moving forward. And if that happens, top 25 running back for you right there. I really do think that in this offense, if Tua is healthy, he could be that. So I would grab him immediately if I could.
What about Jamal Williams in Detroit? You've got DeAndre Swift could be on the shelf, and if he misses a few games, maybe he misses up to week 7. That's possibly misses 3 games. And Jamal Ball's already been the vulture. I mean, I call him that already whenever I see him hit the field. I see 30, lining up. I'm like, great, here comes the vulture again. And it doesn't matter where he lines up. Doesn't have to be in a goal line carry. But, that's a guy I like. What about Brian Robinson? Maybe he's not owned in some leagues, especially redraft.
In a ton of leagues. Are you going to get anything out of him in the next 2 weeks, though?
Well, he's supposed to be back maybe this week. I think week 5, week 6. I think he's able to come off the pup or whatever he was on in week 4.
I would say that both those guys are great targets as well, right? And in a lot of leagues, Raheem Mostert's not going to be available, but if he is, I'm going in on Mostert.
Yeah, I love Mostert. I think you're right on Mostert. I just want to look at a couple other players because you need a few options, right? So Mostert, he's the hoster with the Mostert.
Well, we also have the situation in Arizona with Connor and his ankle.
And Eno Benjamin. You can go after Eno Benjamin there. He's the guy.
So Darrell Williams, though, he outsnapped once Connor went down.
Yeah, but I'm staying away from that whole offense because even Kyler looks bad. I don't want any of those players. I mean, I was out on Arizona back in the offseason when everyone was in on Kyler. I was like, no, thank you. I'm out. There's too much uncertainty there, and I suspect that coaching staff won't be here next year. So there's going to be a lot of weirdness in Arizona. If I'm holding Arizona assets right now in redraft or keeper, I'm selling. Get me out of Kyler Murray. Get me out of Marquise Brown. Sell them while the name still matters, and get some other pieces to go make a title run. But yeah, I mean, if it's running backs for me, it is I'm getting in a week early on Brian Robinson, getting a week early on maybe Gus Edwards, getting in a week early on Ty Davis Price. Maybe I'm looking at like a Brandon Bolden with the Raiders with Josh Jacobs being nicked up. Like there's some other names that you can go after that may not hit that first run of waivers or may not command a ton of fab that you could probably go get right now. While they may not be week 4 helpers, they're guys who are going to help you through this window we talked about of kind of like week 4 through week 7.
I think so. Well, I think that week 4 is it's such a crucial week in general. For no reason. I just wanted to say that to fill time while my notes were loading on my phone. Now that has happened, week 4 is just like week 3. And
So ridiculous. Well, I think it is actually pretty crucial because you think about most playoffs start week 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
So week 4, like a third of the season's done. A third of your playoff run has finished. You may need to make a drastic move to go improve your roster. It's going to be a waiver ad. It's going to be a trade. Like, you're going to have to get crazy if you want to compete.
All right. Well, let me give you some wide receivers, and you got to pick one. All right.
Okay.
These guys are all owned roughly the same. And actually, one of them's owned a little bit more, but Romeo Dobbs, Josh Palmer, George Pickens.
Ooh.
You will, if you are watching this show right now, one of those guys is available in your league, unless you play with savants.
I'll tell you, I love Pickens. I really do. But I don't know if I love the opportunity or volume there in Pittsburgh right now.
The target share is looking a little sketchy for him.
Yeah, because I think it can come and go.
Yeah.
Give me Romeo Dobbs.
Anyway.
Yeah, give me Romeo Dobbs. Yeah, it's a guy that I liked a little bit in the offseason. And he didn't look great at the Senior Bowl and all that kind of stuff, but the opportunity in Green Bay is too great, especially with Watkins hitting the IR. It's going to be Dobbs and Cobb, it looks like, and Lazard, of course. And teams are just going to go ahead and put their number one over Lazard, and he can be blanketed and removed from a game script pretty quickly. So Dobbs, he could get enough residual targets, even if he's only getting 6 or 7 a game, where he can turn 6 or 7 targets into 5 for 65 and maybe a touchdown. That's useful in PPR. So give me that.
All right. I'm into that. Here's a guy that's coming back. We talked about him last week, but Michael Gallup, right? So this is like we're getting into wheels up time for Michael Gallup, and I would expect in the next 2 to 3 games he's going to emerge as a guy that you can throw into your flex. I'm excited for him. We already talked about him though. If he's available, grab him. What do you think about Russell Gage with just the general ins and outs of that receiving core and Tom Brady's seeming affinity for him at the end of that game, despite the fact I know it's because their whole team was dead. But Tom Brady did throw to him like 7 times in a row to close that game out. So Russell Gage for me, I think if you need like a wide receiver 3 or something, just a replacement coming into bye weeks, maybe. I don't know. I'm not super like head over heels for Russell Gage, but he's popped up on a couple lists I've seen.
Russell Gage's value is going to evaporate again in about 2 weeks. So if you're chasing him down and spending fab on him right now, it's going to be money poorly spent.
There we go. That's what I like to hear. You want me to give you 2 more running backs and then I'll move on from them? Yes,
go ahead. I'm actually chatting with somebody on the website live right now who's asking about waivers.
Oh, nice. What are they asking?
It's actually about IDP, so we'll save that for the Getting Defensive show.
Here on Getting Defensive. So you mentioned Brian Robinson, and
I mentioned him. Yeah, we mentioned him already.
Yep, but I'm going to move over to a different Robinson rookie, Wan'Dale Robinson. Owned in 5% of leagues right now. Nobody's touching him.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I don't know what to make of that entire Giants wide receiver group. I would imagine you might be in leagues where like Shepard, Robinson, and Tony are available, and maybe even Mr. Butterfingers over there, who I won't even name because he's been such an absolute joke. That whole wide receiver core, I think, is it even worth trying to like hit the home run and figure out who's going to emerge?
Nope.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at.
I mean, the guy who's like leading that wide receiver group is actually David Sills. And that's not a joke. That's a real thing in terms of like, general target volume and route participation and the whole bit. Like, that's the guy, and that's terrifying. Daniel Jones isn't a very good quarterback, number one. David Sills is the guy leading that whole group. I really expect the Giants to eat some of Kenny Galladay's contract and try and move him before the deadline just to get him out of the room. Wan'Dale, I loved him as a dart throw in the offseason, but he's not worth adding at this point. I've seen nothing from the Giants offense that leads me to believe that there's going to be a role for him and that he'll be fantasy viable.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. I mean, I like him more in Dynasty as well. Tony's the one for me that's like, I don't know if I want to keep him on my roster anymore, but I feel like I have to.
Maybe somebody, I mean, if you're in a redraft, maybe you can flip him for like a few bucks in Fab.
Yeah, if you're allowed to trade Fab, maybe you could.
Yeah, I mean, if
All
you
right,
can trade
last
it,
two.
yeah, that's what I would do.
Tight ends. Tight
Okay.
ends have been kind of annoying this year throughout the landscape of fantasy. Um,
Jelani Woods, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns. OJ Howard, 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, like 28 yards or whatever he had in week 1.
yep.
Yeah, tight ends are a freaking disaster.
Oh, well, I mean, if you combine Cole Kmet, Brevin Jordan, Cameron Brate, and George Kittle at this point, you finish with like the tight end 42.
You want to talk about just
After
make my
3
brain
weeks,
hurt.
sick.
It makes my whole brain hurt.
All right. Well, the number one guy on waivers that we didn't talk about yet is Khalil Herbert. Obviously, if he's available, grab him.
He's probably not available in most leagues, though.
Yeah, I would imagine he's taken, but he did look incredible.
He looked great. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
are you going to go with Tyler Conklin and the absolute smoke show that's been happening with him right now and the quarterback change that's about to happen in New York? Or Logan Thomas and the kind of typical mid-tier, mid-upper tier tight end thing you get with him where he scores nothing one week and is good the next week?
Other. You're
Other.
going to choose other? Is that an option? All right, here's where I'm at. Tyler Conklin has always been kind of a serviceable player. I liked him in Minnesota.
He's been
well
playing
enough.
like a top 6 tight end so far this season.
Right.
So.
He's looked really good with the target volume. Here's the thing. Tyler Conklin's performance, I really believe, is directly tied to the way Joe Flacco plays quarterback.
Oh, it's definitely, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah. So I don't know that we're going to see the same kind of performance once we get Zach Wilson in there, the MILF hunter, as it were. That's not going to be a thing. I think Conklin falls by the wayside, targets drop off, and we start to see the uptick come back for Elijah
Moore. That Zach Wilson's ever walked up to a soccer mom and asked if he could show her his Conklin?
Moving on. Jesus. It's a good thing this isn't made for kids. I don't even know what to do anymore. No, I think Zach Wilson, like realistically, like where we're at with this guy is he wants to get the ball to Garrett Wilson probably. He's going to want to get the ball to Elijah Moore. He likes to push the football down the field where Flacco is more inclined to just kind of like, here's the little dump off. Here you go, Conklin. Like he'll zing it in there to Wilson here and there, but he's not really trying to take you deep. He's not looking for the big play all the time. Wilson is. And so I would suspect that Conklin's value is going to drop off and we're going to see more come back. I'm probably trying to move Conklin if somebody is, hyped up on his current performance and see if I can get something back for him,
Are you picking up a wide receiver? I'm moving on real quick just to close out the episode. Just hot topics right now within the NFL. Are you picking up a quarterback off waivers to play for Russ?
Wait, like you want to drop Russ or to replace him?
You keep him on your bench, but are you going to pick up someone like Trevor Lawrence if he's available or Jared Goff?
I don't know if I'm there. Russ is still out there getting fantasy points. He's doing most of the Russ things we've come to always expect. Yeah. Now, granted, this week, truthfully, the guy I might go get if I need to just fill in a week and want to feel kind of okay about the matchup, I might go get Geno Smith against Detroit. Replace Russ with Geno. And I'm not advising that. That's a deep cut. I don't really love it. The matchup lines up because Detroit just allows a ton of passing yards, high completion percentages, and he's mobile enough that he should be able to evade enough of the edge rushing onslaught in Detroit. But really, if it's not Geno Smith, give me Jared Goff, I guess. I don't love the matchup for Russ this week. Because he's got the Raiders and they have something to prove. That's a team that's they're amped up.
Final question.
Sure.
What backup running back are you targeting right now in trades?
I'm not.
No one.
No, not right now. We just haven't seen the injury bug or the attrition at the running back position, mainly because a lot of guys are still on snap counts and we're seeing a lot of rotation still. But if you are, the strategy should be to go find guys that are pass catchers. Go grab Naheem Hines. Go grab these guys where it's like, yeah, they're the number 2, but they have a defined role as a pass catcher. Because if they're catching passes, they don't need to run it 15 times. You know what I mean? They can catch 7 passes and give you an RB1 level day. So that's the strategy to follow. Just remember, in PPR, 1 reception is generally worth about 1.7 points. 1 carry is generally worth about a half a point. So when you think about it in that regard, you need a third as many catches as you do carries. Go get your pass catchers and stash them.
That's math. All right. Well, so Jeff has been working on a bunch of graphics for some of these other shows. I have been working on some for Chop Shop as well. Hopefully here either next week or the week after, we will have graphics for our waiver shows, and we
some really cool shit,
a little more organized, which will be great. But in the meantime, we appreciate everyone's support. Things are still evolving on the website. Thank you for watching. And if you're still here, don't forget to click that subscribe button right down there. And that's all I got. Anything else from you, Jeff?
No, man. Good luck in week 4. And, hit us up if you have any questions, man. Good, bad, ugly. Even if there's stuff that you want to see that you need or stuff that you didn't like that we did, let us know. We're looking to always improve and get better.
Hey, and I just want to say one more thing, baby. Go Vols, baby. Go Vols. Florida Hate Week was a success. I'll catch y'all later. Have fun.
Did you click the button?
Yep. There you go.
They have no idea where we are, who we are, where we're coming from, or who we are, where we're coming from, or who we are, where we're coming from, or who we are, where we're coming from. And this is the best of the best. Wow, that is football.